FNYY.
On January 17, 1995, the Southern Hyogo earthquake struck the area around Kobe City. The earthquake destroyed more than 250,000 buildings and killed 6,434 people. The earthquake affected serious damages to the society. Later, this earthquake was also called the Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake. This is 28 years after the earthquake. Every year in the stricken area, citizens hold many memorial services in their communities in order to remember the earthquake. When society experiences a huge tragedy, such as a major disaster or a great war, it tends to not only record it as a historical fact, but also pass it on to the next generation as social memories. French sociologist Maurice Albax conceptualized such a shared memories by a society as a collective memories. This collective memory is shared throughout society, not only through the direct experiences of individuals, but also through a variety of means, including oral traditions, monuments such as memorials, performance in public spaces, written records such as literature and reportage, media records such as film and videos, and institutions such as museums and archives. In Japan too, after a major disaster such as an earthquake, many survivors try to record and share their experiences and memories with others. And the society pays much attention to such activities. These activities are not only those of survivors, but also involve a variety of social practices. Here are some specific examples. This photograph is an activity to pass down memories of disasters between parents and children. In this photo, survivors in a small group talk about their memories with each other. This photo is a performance by a storyteller in a museum. In Japan, experienced narrators who talk about their disaster memories in front of the public are called kataribe. They are socially respected. This picture shows a monument to the memory of Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake. This monument is located in the center of the city of Kobe and always lit. A stone monument recording the name of the victims of the earthquake has been erected beside the monument. This video shows junior high school students singing a memorial song at the annual memorial assembly held on January 17th.
地震にも負けない
This photo shows a collection of books written about the Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake. This collection is houses in a university library. This video footage is a video documentary program produced by NHK based on the video recording of the earthquake made by the survivors themselves.
午前5時46分、地震発生直後、市民が撮影した映像です。映像には救助を求める人々の姿が克明に捉えられています。
This photo is a web archive of a radio program produced by FMYY about storytelling by survivors. In this way, various attempts are being put into practice to pass on the memory of the disaster. The purpose of this presentation is to report the results of our sociological research on the social behavior of sharing and passing on the memories of survivors of natural disasters, such as earthquakes and tsunamis. Our research target area were Kobe City, Japan, struck by the Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake. This presentation is mainly based on the results of researches conducted in 2019 in the disaster area of the earthquake. Almost all researches on the transmission of disaster memory has been conducted from the perspective of disaster survivors, looking at how to pass on their experiences to the next generation. On the other hand, this study, we investigated the transmission of disaster memory from the perspective of post-disaster generation, who will inherit the memory of disasters. In this presentation, I'd like to present some interesting findings. This study was organized by Kansei Gakuin University and FMYY, a community broadcasting station in Kobe, and conducted on 445 students born after the earthquake, studying at 3 universities in the disaster area. Here are some of the results. This table shows how respondents gained knowledge and information about the Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake. According to the table, school education had the highest ratio of over 75%. Second are family conversations, accounting for 67% of the total. Third are non-fiction videos, 54%, and narratives by survivors, 44%. The same questions were asked in a survey in the Bantul earthquake disaster area in 2021. The survey was conducted by the research team of Universitas Atmajaya Yogyakarta under the supervision of Dr. Bilowo. This table shows the results. When asked, how did you obtain knowledge and information about 2006 Bantul earthquake? First, about 70% of respondents cited family and relatives as their source of information about the disaster. Second, about 40% of respondents cited visual media such as television and movies. Compared to Japan, family and relatives and visual media are similarly important sources of information about disasters. However, it is clear that schools play greater role as a source of information in Japan than in Indonesia. This table shows what respondents consider effective as a means of passing down memories of the Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake. According to the table, school education accounts for the highest percentage, followed by the survivors' narratives and non-fiction media works, both of which show high percentages. This fact indicates that the younger generation born after the earthquake recognizes the greater importance of the knowledge and information gained through the narratives of survivors, and also information obtained through the media. The same question was asked in a survey conducted in 2021 in Indonesia. This table shows the results. When asked, what are your current preferred media for disaster mitigation awareness? Respondents considered it television and documentary films, online news on the internet, and school education to be the three most effective medias. Indonesia showed a higher percentage than Japan in using the internet as a source of information. However, overall, both in Japan and Indonesia, visual media and school education are more effective in passing on the disaster memories. This fact reminds us once again of the important role that visual media play in passing on the memories of disaster from generation to generation. Now we would like to ask the younger generation who did not experience the Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake. What issues of the Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake do they care about? This table shows the level of interest expressed by respondent for each item. The higher the items of interest, the higher the value. The table shows that the respondents are highly interested in knowledge useful for future disaster prevention and information useful for disaster prevention, such as evacuation procedures immediately after the disaster, while they are relatively less interested in the personal stories of victims and the episode and the lives of the survivors. Thus, the post-disaster generation has an unbalanced interest in past disasters. This suggests that their memories of the disaster may also be biased. Next, we would like to look at the opinions and attitudes of the post-disaster generation toward disasters and the transmission of memories of disasters. In these questions, respondents were asked whether they agreed or disagreed with a particular opinion on a 5-step scale. I will introduce some of the most characteristic and interesting responses to the questions used in the survey. Shall we start? The statement is like this. Those who have never experienced disasters still have a responsibility to pass down to the future generations the memories of major disasters. 86% of respondents agree with this statement. This result suggests that the post-disaster generation feels a strong responsibility to pass on the memory of the disaster. However, the responses to the following statement is very delicate. To avoid causing more grief to the family and friends of those who died in the earthquake, it's best not to mention the case of individual victims. 35% of respondents withheld an attitude in response to this statement. However, the overall trend is in favor of the statement. In other words, the post-disaster generation is somewhat reluctant to convey the negative experiences of the victims. Respondents were reluctant to confront the negative experiences of victims, but on the other hand, they are extremely positive about communicating the positive action of survivors. The next statement is this. We need to tell more stories of the survivors and the devastated area that have worked valiantly to overcome the disaster. 73% of the respondents agree with this statement. In the other words, the respondents were rather reluctant to remember the painful experiences and sad events of the survivors, but they were willing to remember and tell others about the positive actions and attitude of survivors. This attitude of respondents seems to be closely related to their responses to the following statement. After examining the usefulness for future disaster prevention, priority should be given to conveying information and knowledge that actually will be useful for disaster prevention. Over 80% of respondents agree with this statement. This fact suggests that the post-disaster generation tend to make value judgment about the content of memories of conveying memories of disasters and prioritize memories of useful knowledge and experiences that will actually be useful for future disaster prevention. This phenomena can be called selective transmission of memory. Now, I would like to address the question of preserving buildings destroyed by disasters or disaster remains as a means of passing on the memory of disaster to future generations. The Great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake also left many disaster remains. These are the remains known as a Kobe wall. It is part of buildings that has lost in a fire that broke out after the earthquake. After the earthquake, many memorial events were held in front of this wall. Many citizens have called for the preserving of this wall. However, it was removed because it was an obstacle to redevelopment. This is a port facility destroyed by the earthquake. The government decided to preserve these remains today. These remains remain as a memorial facilities in a part of the port of Kobe. Thus, the decision to preserve or remove disaster remains is often controversial. Whether to preserve or demolish the remains of the disaster is, in fact, an important choice when considering post-disaster reconstruction. Now I'd like to ask the students participating in this seminar. Do you agree with the following statement? Please answer with a show of your hands. Right? In order to promote recovery from disasters, it is better to demolish the structural remains of the disaster as much as possible and replace them with new cityscapes and urban landscapes. I repeat again. In order to promote recovery from disasters, it is better to demolish the structural remains of the disaster as much as possible and replace them with new cityscapes and urban landscapes. All in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, please raise your hands. Now let's see what the young people of Kobe have to say. The opinions of the post-disaster generation, the young people in Kobe, are divided on this question. 32 respondents agree with this statement, while 28% disagreed. The undecided response rate was 40%. In responses to these statements, the attitude of young students of the post-disaster generation in Kobe was divided. The dilemma is whether to prioritize recovery from the disaster or to cherish the memory of disasters. This dilemma has caused a great deal of debate, not only about the great Hanshin-Awaji earthquake, but also about the other disaster that has occurred in Japan since then, such as the tsunami disaster in eastern Japan. A similar question was asked in Indonesia. In a survey conducted in the affected area by Bantul earthquake, 53% of the respondents answered, "It is better to demolish the disaster remains and replace them with modern buildings." In contrast, 62.6% of the respondents from the Mount Merapi disaster-stricken area answered, "The disaster remains are reminder of the tragic events, but they should be preserved." In Bantul and Mount Merapi, the responses showed the opposite trend. It is very interesting that the two disaster-affected areas showed different trends. We are now trying to figure out why. Finally, I would like to present the following two tables. The two tables compare respondents' attitudes to the different opinions about passing on the memory of the earthquake to the next generation. The table on the right shows the extent to which respondents agree with the opinion that regarding the memory of the earthquake, the emotion and feelings of the survivors should be passed on to the next generation. According to the table, 59.1% of the respondents tend to agree with their opinion. On the other hand, the table on the left shows the degree to which respondents agree with the opinion that regarding the memories of the earthquake, objective fact and information based on accurate data should be passed on to the next generation. This table showed that 64.9% of the respondents agree with the statement. Comparing these two tables, we understand that respondents in the post-quake generation recognize that not only the objective fact of the earthquake, but also the emotion and experiences of survivors are equally important. Therefore, the research team produced two different types of broadcasting programs to convey memories of the disaster with the cooperation of FMYY, a community media station in the affected area of Kobe. The one is Memories of the Great Hanshin-Awaji Earthquake told through the voices of survivors. And the other is Memories of Great Hanshin-Awaji Earthquake as told by objective data. Please take a look at a part of the Japanese versions. The first one is, please watch it.
住まいは、ちょうどこの長田の町の高取山という山がありますけど、その麓で、住んでおります。で、震災の時はそちらの方で揺れを体験しました。
All right. The next film is A Memory of Great Hanshin-Awaji Earthquake as told by objective data. Please watch it.
厚生労働省の調査では、地震が発生してからその年の6月までに亡くなった人のうち、死因が窒息や圧死だったという人が 77% に達しました。
These two programs were shown to students of post-disaster generation in Kobe. We then conducted a viewing response survey to them. The survey results can be summarized as follows. As for the memory through the victims' voices, the program fostered understanding and empathy for the experiences and feelings of the disaster victims. The program brought about a change in their view of life, attitude toward life, and values. However, since the program focuses on personal episodes, it is difficult to understand the whole image of the disaster. On the other hand, regarding memories told by objective data, the programs brought more knowledge and information to grasp the whole picture of the disaster. However, the program brought feeling of anxiety, such as fear and misery to some viewers. Using these results as a guide, we are currently working on a new program that will integrate these two programs and take advantage of the best of both. I'm sure that the next time I will see you all, you will be able to see the next program. Well, this is conclusion of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.